Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
I'm chilling, bro. It feels like the countdown to NBA training camp is taking too dang long. Somehow we're supposed to make it another 2 to 3 weeks, but guess what? We've got WNBA playoffs to hold us off. And TV, we've got some pretty solid series to kick off the playoffs. Postseason should be real fun, and this should be a really good episode centered around some real competitive basketball as we wait for the NBA season to start.
100%. Guys, I mean, we've been trying to record this episode for a few days now, but the WNBA standings were going crazy, especially on the final day of the season, that we were like, man, how can we even record this? So we held it off till basically the last minute. The games, you know what? The episode's coming out on the Saturday. We record this in the morning, guys. So this is like, we're going to have a same day recording. We're going to be having this up. And the WNBA playoffs start tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be going through all 4 series. We're going to preview all of them and see which teams make it to the next round. It should be a very good episode. But Jay, before we get into all that, we have a lot of series to go through. We do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at the Routine Jumper. Those things can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok, on Instagram for the best daily NBA content. That's where you're going to find the news. That's where you're going to find the series. That's where you're going to find all the clips. Make sure you check us out over there. In terms of YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Also, Jay, we're not going to have this episode up just yet. But Jay, we recorded a really fun episode earlier this week, and I'm excited to have these guys see it soon. If you want to do a little bit of a preview for that one that we have coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously our goal is always to create some more evergreen content that can kind of last, can be some interesting stuff that's fun for everybody. So we actually did an all-time NBA draft, brought on some guests. I know you guys are only used to seeing our 2 faces. So not only did we bring 1 guest that was new, but we brought 2, and our goal is to hopefully have them on a couple more times throughout the NBA season as we kind of, try to build out more opinions, more NBA takes, try to grow beyond just our personal opinion. So we trying to build out a little bit of a network so you guys can have some new faces and new opinions on the podcast as well. So looking forward to that. It's a real different approach to the way that we did the draft. Obviously, with it being 4 of us, not only did we do all-time drafting, but this was a full organization build. This was not your good, hey, we picked the best 20 players in the NBA, everybody has a starting 5, and that's that. Nope. We went in a full-fledged build out your roster, 13-man rotation level of team building, and it was quite a good time.
It was definitely a good time, and that episode's going to be coming out this month, so be on the lookout for that. Again, the new faces, man, hopefully they can come on like more in the future. That's going to be a good episode. But Jay, it's time to get into the WNBA playoffs. We have a lot of competitive matchups, and I think we're going to start off here with probably the most competitive matchup, if you really want to put it, depending on how we both see how the series plays out. But we're going to start with the 4-5 matchup. This matchup has actually been the one that's been ready like for the past week. Every other matchup waited till the exact last day to figure out what the series is going to be, except for this 4-5. This has been settled for the last week or so. We have the number 4 seeded Phoenix Mercury taking on the number 5 seed, the defending champion, New York Liberty. Very fun matchup between the two. Obviously, the Liberty have been riddled with injuries throughout the year, but finally are healthy going into the playoffs, Jay. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. I'm going to throw it over to you right away. Your thoughts on the series, and who do you think is going to win and why?
Okay, so the first thing that stood out to me when I was doing my research for Phoenix is that history is not on their side by a good margin here. Starting with the fact that Phoenix has not won a playoff series since 2021.
Yes.
Back when they were in the WNBA finals. So this is not only a very different team from that squad, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But also, this is a team that historically, at least over the last 4 years, or I guess last 3 years technically, has not really had much playoff success. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go into this series, given the fact that they have new faces, but all proven right, commodities
Yeah,
at the end of the day, right? Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, you have Satu still. You're in a position where you can really turn your history around here. Kalia Copper, when she burst onto the scene for the Chicago Sky, it was when she had the playoff run of playoff runs as a young player, right? Just a few seasons ago. She has a chance to turn the clock back on that again. That was only 2 years ago now, right?
yeah,
That happened. So they're in a really interesting spot here because of the fact that they do have real playoff tested lead players, or more particularly, they have players that have all been the best or the second best player on a championship team
yeah.
making up this roster. The only person you can't really say that about probably is Satu Sabali, and we know what she brings to the table as an offensive threat. So I think when you look at what Phoenix brings to the table in particularly, they are in a really interesting spot because they have a chance to do something special for their organization, given the fact that like this is what you make all those moves for. This is what you bring all
Mhm.
these headlining names in for, right? This is what you try to do in the, post Diana Taurasi era, is build a roster that can take a step forward that it hasn't been able to do in the last 3 to 4 seasons.
No, 100%. I mean, what the series tells me, especially with between this like Mercury and Liberty team, and seeing
Mm.
how both big threes in particular have played throughout the season, is that talent wise, even though I will still edge it to the New York Liberty, I still think that, especially as a proven commodity, they won the freaking championship last year, for goodness sake.
Right.
But Satu, Alyssa Thomas, and Kalia Copper, they are, in talent wise, they can compete.
Yeah.
That's what they, especially knowing that Alyssa Thomas is probably like third place in MVP this year, probably one of the best seasons of her career. They could definitely compete with the New York Liberty.
Mm.
Where this is going to be one, J, and what I'm really excited to see like how these matchups go is the depth. Because even though
Mm.
like the top three, it's very competitive. Even though I will edge the New York Liberty, the Liberty have just made so many moves throughout the last couple of seasons to really improve their
Yeah.
depth. One of them being WNBA Finals MVP, Misamin, and like that. She
Oh yeah.
and, like,
Emma Meeseman, yeah.
Emma Misamin, she has been awesome to end the year, and now you're having that type of capabilities coming off the bench. That's going to be freaking filthy. You have Natasha Cloud, who's had an up and down year, but also has proven to be pretty solid when it comes to the playoffs. I think when it comes to those two aspects, even though I think that the Mercury bench is solid, this is where the series is going to be won. And we've seen the depth of the Liberty come up huge. Leonie Fibich in her rookie season last year had
Yeah.
massive moments in the playoffs. You had even Niar Sabli. By the way, the Sabli matchup is going to be something like that'll be pretty fun to check out here. Niar Sabli had a massive game in the closing finals game last year. So we have proven play performers even deep into the Liberty bench, which we that's the question marks that we're gonna have for a team like the Phoenix Mercury, who have been very good all season long. But Jay, like I mentioned off the top, the Liberty have had their injuries throughout the year. They missed Jonquil Jones for the early parts of the year. They've had Breonna Stewart miss a couple of weeks during this end stretch. She ended off like pretty strong at the end of the season. But this is still the defending NBA champions, and they're healthy at the right time. That's the scary side, even for a team who has been solid all year round with an MVP candidate in Alyssa Thomas. The sleeping giant has been sleeping a lot this year because they haven't been ready. They're ready to ball now. And I think
Yeah.
this is like a good chance. And I think it's a good matchup where they're like, okay, we have been hurt, but like if we are true, like this is a good test to see like how healthy they can be and how long this is sustainable for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to mention because, like you said, from a talent standpoint, and we said this all season long, TV. From a talent standpoint, this team could go band for band
With the
with anybody.
links.
With anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Definitely, yeah, definitely can go band for band with the Lynx. I feel like they're more than capable. And you even mentioned it in this preview as part of their matchup with some like a team like Phoenix. I think they're very much on par talent wise with Phoenix. I think you can make an argument that when you talk about depth, that's where their edge is from a talent perspective. I think the health factor is so important. I was reading something earlier that said down the stretch in their last 10 games, they've been 5-5 with 4 of their losses coming to other playoff teams. Now, that comes down to chemistry, right? You're factoring in Emma Misamin, you're trying to still rework Breonna Stewart back into the mix. Obviously, you're in a situation where you have a ton of star players that touch the ball.
Yeah,
on
even
a
Sabrina
regular
missed some
basis.
games too. Yeah, Sabrina missed some games too near the end there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, given the fact that Sabrina tends to run the show, Jonquel Jones obviously is a player that can operate a lot better without the ball, but does still need her reps on ball
Yeah,
here and there, right? So there's a certain level of equity that that these players have on the team of being able, specifically on the offensive end, that requires them to have to kind of rekindle that flame a little bit after everybody comes back from injury. Now, like you said, the sleeping giant aspect of it is everybody's right now. So now that everybody's okay, everybody's put together, if everything with their chemistry developing over the last couple of games gives you a sign that, like, okay, there's still some chinks in the armor. Again, 4 losses to other NBA, other WNBA playoff teams, but so there clearly is still some chinks in the armor. But in a 3-game series, talent for talent, band for band, if these 4 in particular, because I think Fiabich is gonna be like an X factor on her own, but I think Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, and I'm gonna go with Emma Mieseman as that 4th. If these 4 synergy can click the way I think they're capable of, I can actually say this might be a quick series.
it could be.
Whether or not that
But
chemistry like locks in the way it needs to, questions.
no, 100%. And I don't know how much people really put into like momentum going into the playoffs. The Liberty ended
Mm.
up the season on a 3-game winning streak. They like finally found if it finally like looked like they were like finding their chemistry, like you mentioned. While the Phoenix Mercury have went on a 3-game losing streak, they had a chance to really compete in those top two alongside the Atlanta Dream and the Vegas Aces to try and compete for those final for the final, the top twos, the number 2 and number 3 spot. But
Mm.
unfortunately, they lost a couple of games here. The only question I have for you too, because this is one of your girls, Satu Sabali, who started off the season very strongly. Jay, do you think the struggles a little bit at the end of the season is something to worry about with this? I know like Alyssa Thomas has been awesome and she's been able to carry, but like, do you think Satu's struggles like near the end of the season is going to potentially hurt the Phoenix Mercury in this one?
So I think it's funny that you bring that up, only because I feel as though it was just a weird time to start really tailing off.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. But I think that she's going to be very interesting, particularly when you talk about her matchup with Brianna, because that's really, to me, if you had to pick out one in particular one-on-one matchup that stands out the most to me,
Yes.
I think it would be Satu versus Brianna Stewart, and more particularly how they combat each other around the rim. I don't see that. If I'm being real with you, I don't think this is going to be a big 3-point shooting series, despite the fact that New York is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league. I would not be surprised if this is a very physical series. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of free throws, right? Which New York leads the league in free throw percentage. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to put a lot of onus, particularly on Stewie getting to the free throw line, really testing Satu Sabali's defense. I wouldn't be surprised if on the other end, Satu, her focus is less of trying to be a mid-range jump shooter and focusing on making Brianna Stewart truly have to guard her in the half court in situations where it's like, oh no, we're going to make your best offensive scorer play defense just as much as you're going to make me have to work on the other end. Talking about Sabali having to guard Stewie on the other end, I think that that's going to be a big time one-on-one matchup. I think it's going to be a lot of paint touches. I would not be surprised if this is a not low 3-point attempt series, but I would be very surprised if both of these teams shoot around what their season averages are from beyond the arc. I actually think this is going to be a tough 3-point shooting series. I think both teams are going to realize it very early. I think game 1 is going to set that tone. And I think it's going to become a very physical series where a player like Satu Sabali, her physicality around the paint, her physicality as a finisher, her and Alyssa Thomas to a lesser degree, obviously, I think are going to be very important in terms of setting a physical tone. So yes, things got a little weird towards the back half of the season, back half of the season when it came to her offensive production. But I think in this series, where I think things are going to slow down, her offensive production is going to become that important, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try to heavily feature her early and often.
No, 100%. I think that, like you mentioned, in terms of matchups, that is one to definitely look out for. Two of the best fours in the WNBA right now. That's going to be something to really look out for. Hopefully, we get some good picks of like Satu and Yara actually guarding each other too. I think that'd be like a really fun thing to look out for as well. But Jay, your prediction for this matchup? It's going to be talent wise. I mean, we talked about it. Talent wise, it should be good. But this is the defending champions we're talking about. Will they finally click at the right time? Where they're going to see their dominance come through in the series? Jay, who do you have winning in how many games?
Yeah, man. So ESPN has the New York Liberty at a 73.5 chance of advancing. And I'm going to be real with you. I'm rolling with them. I'm rolling with them. I think this will be Liberty in 2, or no, Liberty in 3. They got to win 2 games. I think this will be Liberty in 3. I think because I feel like Phoenix is going to force they're going to force their hand. I feel like Phoenix is not going to go out sad. I feel like it's going to be a very tough game 3. I will even go as far as saying that the momentum swing makes it where I am nervous for Phoenix in game 1 because, like you mentioned beforehand, New York is coming in on a winning streak. Phoenix, on the other hand, is coming in things a little wobbly. I think the big question mark will again be that synergy implementing Emma Mieseman into the offense, coming off of what was supposed to be a really strong building block coming off the All-Star break wasn't able to get worked in as well as New York would have loved to. So for them to now be catching their stride so late in the season, you just hope that that momentum rolls forward into the playoffs if you're them. But I'm going to go with New York in 3. I would not be surprised if New York goes crazy in game 1, Phoenix responds positively in game 2, and then game 3, I just trust New York's players to be able to finish out a closeout game, even if I believe it's going to be relatively close. I think it's going to be a competitive game 3, and I wouldn't be surprised if it looks something similar to that WNBA Finals finale game against Minnesota last year, where it was like it comes down to like the last 2 or 3 possessions. I believe in Phoenix that much, but I also think New York is just that talented.
Man, I do think it's going to be a close series, but I think it's because it's a shorter series. I'm going to go with the Liberty in 2, but I think they're going to win 2 close games. I think it's going
Okay,
to be.
well, that's good logic too. Yeah,
I think it's going to be 2 close games. This is a type of series where you can't go to a feeling process. This is like we didn't mention this off the top. This is a 3-game series in the first round, so there's no
yeah,
feeling out process. There's no okay. Let's see. Like even if we don't have the gas, like our foot on the gas in game 1, we can't. And there's to kind of see like how they're gonna play. There's no of that in the first round. You can maybe do that
true.
in round 2 when it's a best of 5, and you'll definitely see the chess matches happen in the WNBA finals. Game 1, you need to put your foot to the metal, and I think both these teams understand that. I think both these teams are going to come out swinging. I think it's going to be 2 close games, but when it really comes down to it, Sabrina, Brianna Stewart, I feel like you have those, and then Emma Mieseman. Usually, she's struggling to maybe find her place within this big 4. 58% from the field, 66% from 3. I think having that is just an extra weapon. Scoring
Yeah,
14 points a game in the regular season, I think that's going to really put them over the top. Having those multiple options, I need Kalia Cooper to be and Saudi Sabali to be more aggressive in that end and like really try and be the ones to really take over games when it does get close. But when it comes to being able to trust these guys late in games, I'm gonna go with the WNBA champions. I'm not saying it's gonna be just a complete blowout in these 2 games, but I think it's gonna be just 2 really close games. Give me the Liberty in 2.
yeah, and that's the funny part. I would not be me personally. I wouldn't be shocked if game 1 was lopsided. That's the interesting part
Yeah,
about it, and that's where I think it's so interesting that you bring up the idea of it not being not being any room for feeling out your opponent. Right? That is very true. You're on very borrowed time here.
yeah,
Right? First game of the series is on Sunday. Very next set of games is Tuesday and Wednesday. There is not going to be a whole lot of time to
yeah.
figure all of this out. But I think that also comes down to the momentum swing aspect of what you said earlier on, which is like I feel like game 1, New York is going to ride the hot hand they've been on over the last handful of games. I'm sure they hear the noise about their record against other playoff teams over the last couple of weeks, and I think they're going to look at that and say, "No, we're the defending champions. we're going to punch this team in the mouth. We're going to get it done. And game one, they're going to come out and announce themselves as that team that everybody needs to still fear. I think game two, Phoenix is going to look at themselves and say, history can't keep repeating itself. We're coming into this series. We've already lost a game, which means we're on elimination watch going into Tuesday. No, we need to get this dub, and game two be the one where they respond positively. Probably a tough fought game, but they respond positively, push it to a game three. And like you said, at that point, I'm going with the defending champs 10 times out of 10. I'll be really interested to see how this goes, TV. I think that game one, and we're going to say this throughout the entire playoff preview, right? Because these series are so short. But I think game one is going to be so important for the Liberty, particularly because the question is going to be, is their momentum going to be able to keep rolling? If they can roll with the momentum they've been on over the last handful of games, this is a team that is going to be trying to clear folks out quick and early.
Yes.
If this is a team that's still trying to work out some of those kinks that we pointed out throughout this breakdown, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Phoenix is not the team that you want to still be trying to figure stuff out against.
100%. Both teams are come out swinging, but yeah, I will have the Liberty in 2. Jay has the Liberty in 3. Should be a fun series, though. Like we said, it's going to be pretty competitive, especially because they've been probably planning each other for the past week. There's going to be a lot of, especially in-game adjustments for sure to be looking out for. Jay, let's move on to the next series, though. We're going to go to the 3-6 matchup. We have the Atlanta Dream, who lost the tiebreaker to the Las Vegas Aces. This is one of the other games that we were talking about, man. We didn't know the seeding for the number 2-3. The Dream ended up being at number 3, and they're facing against probably one of the scrappiest teams in the WNBA, especially knowing the amount of injuries they went through this year. The freaking Indiana Fever managed to get the 6th seed. Obviously, the Caitlin Clark factor is not there, but Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, they've both shown that they've been all WNBA quality this year. But the Dream, man, top 2 offense, top 2 defense, they're finally arrived on the scene. Jay, your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so I feel pretty comfortable with Atlanta in this series, if I'm being honest with you. And I feel like that seems obvious, right, for some of the reasons given the injury situation with the Indiana Fever. But I also just think they match up very well, even if Caitlin Clark were playing, because we know the strength of the Atlanta Dream is their backcourt, right? The combination of Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard this season has been one of the most productive backcourts in the league by
best
far.
backcourt in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ryan Howard is coming off of an Eastern Conference Player of the Week, if I'm not mistaken, very recently. Alicia Gray has had one of the best seasons individually that you could ask for a rising all-star player that now is really starting to solidify herself as one of the top guards in the WNBA. And more particularly, this was one of the better three-point shooting teams in the league this season. One of the things that I think is going to put a lot of stress on the Indiana Fever defense. This team is just very strong at that spot. Not to mention the fact that this team did it with some of their better players missing real time. Like Ryan Howard and Jordan Canada missed dang near 30 games to combined. This team was able to make things really work. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Naz Hillman has been really steady as a hand. Coming in, I believe, as the runner-up for sixth player of the year this year. And then you have the postseason / championship experience of Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner and your front court. They're very well designed, I think is what I'm trying to get at here, right? They work from outside in terms of where their strengths are. They're very well designed, and I think more particularly, they're built in a way that Kelsey Mitchell as an individual player is very solid. And Odyssey Sims has had a very strong season with Caitlin Clark missing time. But if we're going backcourt for backcourt, band for band, TV, it ain't close for me, brother. I ain't gonna lie. Atlanta got this one by a good little margin, bro. I mean, no Ari McDonald, no Sophie Cunningham. I mean, even Ariel Powers, who's usually a pretty decent defensive stopper at the wing / 2 guard position, she's coming in as more of a fill-in spot at this point. If we're going backcourt band for band, Atlanta is dog walking Indiana, personally.
This is for me, Firstly, shout out the Indiana Fever. We talked about this in the midseason awards video. Stephanie White, like, no matter who ends up in this roster, they freaking plucked out Ari McDonald early on in the season. They've been plucking out people just because, not because, they're trying to figure out their bench, out of necessity. They had to do this
Yeah,
out of
really.
necessity. Jay, have you seen that photo of like all the injured players at center court for the Indiana Fever during their thing? Like it's bad. There's a picture of it looks like a starting five, but they're all wearing crutches and stuff like that. Like
Nah, that's wild,
it's
son.
it was I felt bad, but at the same time, shout out to Kelsey Mitchell. I honestly believe that she's done maybe enough to become all WNBA first team at this point for how she's been playing this year. Aaliyah Boston has an all WNBA case as well, probably for the second team. But like you mentioned, Jay, this dream team has been solid from start to finish. Alicia Gray being one of the best players in the W's this year. The depth is there. Ryan Howard has been awesome. Brianna Jones. The depth is crazy for this for this Atlanta Dream Team, and I think more than anything going into the series, because we always talk about when the contenders, the Minnesota Lynx, the Las Vegas Aces, the New York Liberty, those feel like the three givens every single year for the past few years. This is the year that the Dream are trying to become mentioned in those
Yeah.
conversations. So not only are they going to go into the series with the Fever, obviously wanting to win, they are probably big favorites, as you mentioned. They want to come here and make a statement. The only way I see the Fever winning this series is if they just scratch out a win. It's going to be one of those like really like scratch it out type of victories, and Kelsey Mitchell's going to have to go off. But in terms of the amount of offensive options that the Atlanta Dream have, and then with the big men that, like you mentioned, with Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner to help deal with Aaliyah Boston, it's gonna be a tough time for the Indiana Fever. And I think the Atlanta Dream understand what's at stake and knows that if they really want to be respected, especially from like the outer audience who are finally seeing them in playoff moments, they're gonna have to show it here. And and if they're gonna be mentioned with the elite of the elite in the WNBA, they're gonna have to put boots to ass on this Indiana Fever team. More than
Yeah.
anything, this is a statement type of series that they're gonna have to make. This Fever team, as much of scrappy they've been, they have been so hard. They have had so many like people part of the rotation missing. So the Atlanta Dream, I think they're gonna win pretty comfortably too. The only way I see a win here for the Indiana Fever is gonna be like I mentioned, a scrappy sort of win. I think the Dream, like you mentioned, I think there's a confident win here.
Yeah, actually, midway through us recording the podcast, an article came out from the Score talking about not counting out the Fever in this first round series against Atlanta, right? And an interesting quote that I found from Stephanie White in the article says, "We've been able to navigate a lot of disruption, a lot of adversity because they are such a tight knit group. They like each other, they're for each other, they get along well, but that stuff off the floor doesn't matter if they can't put it together on the floor." Very important, by the way.
Yeah,
I think they've done a really good job of giving one another grace in tough situations, pulling one another along, and lifting one another up. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Earlier on in the article, it does talk a lot about the assist numbers for what the Indiana Fever have been able to do despite missing one of their better passers in Caitlin Clark, right? And one of the biggest things that was mentioned is just how much it's been able to open up their offense in a real way. It referenced the article references a game against the Atlanta Dream before the All-Star break where they had 27 assists on 35 shot attempts. That's the gameplay style you're going to have to beat Atlanta with. You are going to have to do this by committee. You are going to have to do this by sharing the rock. This is going to be a series where I think, I mentioned in the Phoenix Mercury versus New York series that I thought was going to be physical. I thought it was going to be very, very roughhousey. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a lot of free throws, right? Opposite end on this one. I think that Indiana, funny enough, TV, because we do this all the time, are going to try to play very similar to their NBA counterparts. I think they're going to want to
pace is
come
gonna be
into
the
this
big
series
thing.
and play with pace and space. I think they're going to throw up a lot of threes. I think they're going to want to move the rock as much as humanly possible, make this defense have to commit. I think make players like Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard really have to guard so they can't just take over offensively. I think they're going to want to put a lot of pressure on those bigs to have to run back, talking about Brianna Jones, talking about what Brittany Griner brings to the table, right? As their big depth is very solid, but can they compete in a series where they
Athletically,
might be forced athletically, where they're going to be forced to have to guard not only in space but in transition a lot. I would not be surprised if this Indiana Fever team's philosophy is we are going to run. We don't have the talent right now to out talent y'all. I think with Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston together, I think they would be in much better favor given the fact that they also still have Kelsey Mitchell in the backcourt, who we had as a top 5 backcourt duo last season, right? You have Aaliyah Boston. Odyssey Sims has been really strong as a player. Lexi Hall has been very productive for them, right? You go across the board and you're like, they're talented. They're just missing their main linchpin. So we can't out talent Atlanta, but we are going to force you to guard 94 feet. You are going to have to play us in transition. And more importantly, you're going to have to play at a pace that might be a little uncomfortable. Again, similar to the Indiana Pacers, the biggest thing for them in their playoff run to the NBA Finals was they made teams uncomfortable with how much pressure they put on the rim because they played so fast and they moved the ball so much. I would not be surprised if Indiana, talking about the Fever now, try to adopt a very similar philosophy. I would not be shocked.
Jay, as you mentioned that, I had to because like I remember watching these two teams, and I had to be like, okay, the Fever definitely play a lot faster than the Dream. The Dream are bottom 2 of pace this year. What the Fever are in the top
Yes.
5. That is going to be
Yes.
that is the factor victory if the Fever want any sort of chance. The Dream, like we mentioned, they're kind of the new kids on the block in terms of trying to become these title contenders. They want to be mentioned among the elite. This is their chance to really like put their stamp on, and especially in the WNBA playoff environment. So
Yeah.
Jay, I'm gonna start off with my prediction here. Jay, I'm gonna have the Dream in 2. I think I have the Atlanta Dream in
Okay.
2 games. Like I mentioned, I think they understand the quality of the moment. They understand like the place that they're in now, and if they
Mm-hmm.
really want to gain the momentum to go into the semifinals, into the NBA, into the WNBA finals, and like really have to really understand what they have on their team and see like how they're able to compete. They're going to need to take care of business in the first round. We talk about this with a lot of NBA teams too, where you've been dominant all regular season long, and when it comes to facing these lower end teams in the playoffs, the expectation is for you to win comfortably and to win dominantly. And I think the Dream need to have that sort of moment here in the playoffs to really change like public perception around. Like you mentioned, the score article thinks that the Fever there's like a small path to victory there. They need to like really show that they belong here, and they really need to take care of an injured Indiana Fever team to show that they are amongst the elite and that there's levels to this. So give me the Atlanta Dream in 2. I think that Alicia Gray has a coming out like a coming out party, but in terms in a playoff setting, I think that we're going to see that Alicia Gray has had fantastic regular seasons for a while now. Can she be able to be a leader on a playoff team? Be it mentioned alongside the Asia Wilsons, the Nafisha Colliers, being able to lead a team deep into the playoffs. I think she's going to have a great series here. Give me the Dream in 2.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Dream in 2 as well. I'm actually going to go to the other backcourt mate in Ryan Howard. The last time that we saw her in the postseason setting, in a winner-go-home game where the Atlanta Dream were sent packing, she finished the game with 36 points, 4 rebounds, and knocked down 8 threes. I think she's itching for some playoff action, bro. I think that one season without some playoff action is one too many. Or excuse me, that was in 2023. Excuse me, in 2024. Excuse me, 2023. One of her coming out party was 36 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 8 threes knocked down. The last time that she was in the postseason, excuse me, was 19 points, 2 blocks, 2 steals, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, and she was 1 of 6 from beyond the arc. So we seen how she was when she first burst onto the scene, and the last taste of postseason play didn't go nearly as well. This is a player that I think is going to want to be back on the right side of her postseason production. I mean, she literally had less points in her 2 games in the playoffs last season than she did in her debut postseason game in 2023. I think that she is going to want to reestablish herself as a player that I feel like a lot of people forgot was like one of the most well-renowned number 1 picks coming out of Kentucky
Mm-hmm.
that we've had in a while. Like, no, she hasn't had like Caitlin Clark hype or Paige Becker's hype, but like Ryan Howard is kind of like Paulo Banchero in a sense when you talk about the WNBA of like this player that was definitively like a number one overall pick talent, came into the WNBA, absolutely killed out the gate, and just is not talked about nearly as much given the fact that they were taken so high and that they were regarded as such high of a talent. I think that she's going to want to reestablish her footing in the midst of all of that and sending the Indiana Fever home to get the Atlanta Dream's first playoff win with her on the roster, full playoff victory, series victory, is going to be big. So I'm watching for Ryan Howard. All that to say,
Oh yeah,
her debut in the playoffs was big, but the last taste of her mouth of postseason play was not nearly as productive. I think she's gonna really want to write that shit.
yeah, no, 100%. But so I had the Dream in 2. Do you have the Dream in 2 as well? I guess.
Yeah, Dreaming
Yeah,
too. Sorry if I didn't say that. Yeah,
yeah, the
Dreaming.
Dream in 2. So yeah, I have already two series going as a sweep. So that's gonna be interesting to see how I view the rest of these ones. But yeah, let's move on to the next series. And then again, and one of those series that we just had no idea of going into the last game of the season, and we finally have clarification. We have the number 2 seeded Las Vegas Aces ending the season, Jay, on a 16-game winning streak.
Yeah,
On a
yeah.
16-game winning
Woo.
streak. I'll talk more about the Aces after, but they're taking on the number 7 seeded Seattle Storm, who the ebbs and flows of their season have been kind of crazy this year, but they ended up
Yes.
taking the 7th seed and probably facing the most hyped team going into this playoffs because for a while, like we mentioned, mid-season, we did not know the state of the Aces. We were like, oh, yes, we know Asia Wilson's good, but how good is the rest of the supporting cast? How is Jewel Lloyd going to be able to bounce back from her slump? Jay, they took away all of those narratives, whatever we talked about earlier on the season, and then the season
Yeah.
on some crazy winning streak, putting themselves right back at the top. Your thoughts on the series, man?
Yeah. TV. I hate to laugh because I like what Seattle brings to the table, bro. But this is just wrong place, wrong time by a hotbed of a margin, dude. Okay. So here's the thing I'm gonna read from ESPN that I thought was really interesting. It comes from their why they could win section. It says the Storm, who boast a league high 4 All-Stars after adding Sykes, talked about adding Brittany Sykes
Yeah.
at the trade deadline. We discussed that trade with the Washington Mystics earlier on the year. Looks stronger on paper than their 23-21 record. Fair, because this team did add Sykes relatively late, and she's going to be a real contributor as an offensive weapon that also gives them defensive prowess. Cool. Until the final week of the season, Seattle actually had a better differential than Las Vegas, which means there was a point where Seattle was kind of starting to find their footing a little bit, and a point where they were in that echelon with these elite teams talking about Vegas, and actually only the Lynx were considered better from a point differential standpoint
Mm-hmm.
by that point. Of course, uh, that gives the fact that the Storm would have to win by 30 plus points now, so it's kind of tough. It goes on to say Seattle also has played often to the level of its competition. Very important phrase here, TV. You said ebbs and flows for the Seattle Storm. I think that sentence is so important. Seattle also has played often to the level of its competition. The Storm went 10-7 against lottery teams, losing the season series to both Los Angeles and Washington. At the same time, Seattle only lost one series to a playoff foe, which was the Indiana Fever, a team they couldn't face until the WNBA Finals. So that goes to say that when this team sees a worthy opponent, so to speak, they tend to rise to the occasion. That's the thing that makes Seattle so interesting. Because if there were any quote unquote worthy opponent to kind of really need to step your game up against, it's the team that in the beginning of the season many doubted and then flipped everything on its head coming out of the All-Star break. And like you said, it looked like one of the most unstoppable forces in the WNBA in the Las Vegas Aces. If Seattle's trend of playing up to its competition remains like steadfast, this is actually going to be a much more competitive series than we both believe. And that's the funny part, because the question is if. The question is if.
Jay, I firstly, let me take this opportunity to talk about the Storm because in this 16-game winning streak, Jay, number 1 in the league in points, number 3 in the league in opponents' points per game. But it's just insane how things were ended for the regular. It's really been a tale of two halves. Shout out to Asia Wilson during the stretch too. 26, 12, and freaking
Ooh,
four and a
my
half
goodness.
stocks per game, Jay. 4.5 stocks. Insane.
Insane work, bro.
But like you,
Insane
but like
work.
you mentioned, the Storm's issue here is not on the defensive end. They're a top 3 defensive team, and it makes sense. You have Gabby Williams, who is one of the best perimeter defenders in the W. You have Ezzy Magabor, who's one of the best interior presences in the W. So, in terms of having the pieces to maybe throw at the Aces, giving them different defensive schemes and stuff, I think the Storm do have that. The question is the offense, because you have because the offense is about I think in the bottom 5 of the WNBA, and Nneka Gumuke, who's been fantastic this year. She made another All Star appearance. Is she and Skylar Diggins enough to bring you enough offensively? Because this is gonna require a bit more from Brittany Sykes, who hasn't been the most efficient player in the league. It also requires more for Gabby Williams to kind of fill in the holes over there, especially at the wing position. I think, like you mentioned, this is one of the series. Actually, I'm going to say here right now. I think the series is going to go 3, just because I feel like there's going to be a game where the Seattle Storm really muck it up. They're really going to throw the kitchen sink at Asia Wilson, because at this point, what else do you do? Asia Wilson is like the most. At this point, there's nothing else you can do. Asia Wilson is just that good of a basketball player. So there's gonna be I think maybe you might see it in game 1, maybe you might see it as a response in game 2, where they just throw everything at Asia Wilson, and you look at someone like a Chelsea Gray, you look at a Jackie Young, and you look at Jewel Lloyd and be like, you guys have to beat us, because we're not letting the best player in the league do this to us, and they're gonna have to throw multiple people at her, and I think the Storm will be able to muck it up. I do still think the Aces are going to win this, just because they got the momentum on their side. They finally figured out kind of the key to victory, which is, just Asia Wilson is just that good of a player, and then let the other ones follow suit. Jackie Young actually had a really strong end of the year as well, as averaging 16 points a game during that winning streak. But as long as the other people fall into place and Asia Wilson is locked in as she is right now, it's literally them versus the world. They can do anything to their potential. But I do think the Storm do muck it up for a little bit. They do have an amazing defense. I do think this still goes 3. This is one of the series where I look at it, I'm like, this could go 3, just because this Storm could really control the pace of the game, control the tempo, because of how good their defense is.
I think that's fair, TV, and I think that's really important. Like you said, this goes back to the physical series. I think this is going to be another one of those, because I think that for Vegas, they're going to want to muck it up just as much as Seattle is, because Seattle defensively, like you said, is already going to be, a bear by itself. Led the league in steal rate this season as a team. I found something earlier that says that they scored the second most points per possession in transition. So this is a team that's going to want to play in transition. But the contrast to that is they were one of the worst half court setting teams in the W this year. But more important than that, the reason why I think that if you're Vegas, you want to muck it up is because Seattle hasn't been productive in close games. The actual stats say that Seattle ranks 9th with a 97.2 offensive rating in the clutch. That means the final 5 minutes of the game, where the game is within 5 points. Their situation for that is that Seattle has lost 9 games by 5 points or fewer. So what does that tell me? If you're the Aces, you need to do 2 things to beat Seattle. Force them to be a half-court offense and keep the game close. Because if you keep the game close and you force them to be a half-court offense, not only can you trust your talent, with Asia Wilson being at the forefront of that, by the way, not only can you trust your talent to be productive in those situations, but that Seattle has a history of folding in those situations. So I think Asia Wilson and the Vegas Aces want to muck this up just as much as Seattle does, because I think if you're the Aces, you force this to be a half-court team, you allow Asia Wilson to absolutely cook in the post, and you have Jewel Lloyd and everything else going on the perimeter. This is going to be a series where I'm going to be honest with you. I'm rolling with the Aces, and I'm rolling with them in 2. I think
Okay,
that Seattle's
I can
going to be
see
in the top
that.
5.
I can see that too for sure. The Storm need the game to go a specific way for them to win. So like I definitely see them being competitive, but the Aces are just rolling so good right now that it's hard
Yes.
not to see them like winning, and especially winning comfortably with the way that they've been playing over this stretch of like the last 40 days or so. So I completely understand that. I do have the Storm winning one game. I do believe it's going to be game 2. But I think that the Aces eventually, and I think if it does go to a game 2, I do think the Aces actually win quite comfortably in that one if it does go to that. So give me the Aces in 3. Should be a fun series. One more thing I just wanted to mention here: I complained about this on multiple years at this point. They kind of made uh, an addition here, obviously bringing in Alyssa Smith from Dallas earlier on. But I'm keeping my eye on that 5 position. Last year with Kia Stokes, I had my quarrels against that, and I need her to
I do
produce
remember
here.
that.
I have my quarrels against Kia Stokes, and now she's a backup, so maybe she's not that much riding on hers. They have Melissa Smith, who's had a solid year so far for the Las Vegas Aces, but the Seattle Storm, if they can get stuff from Ezzy Magabor, and if Dominic Malonga can maybe take a big step up here in the playoffs, that could be another point of contention there for the Las Vegas Aces. So I'm definitely looking at that, but I do have the Aces winning in 3.
Yeah.
Jay, the final series here, and this is going to be such an interesting one because we have the expansion, Golden State Valkyries, first time in WNBA history where you have an expansion team make the WNBA playoffs. History making, of course, taking on by far and away the most dominant team all season long, the Minnesota Lynx. Jay, the variants of these teams could not be any more different. The Valkyries will make things mucky and icky for anyone that they face. They take away very easy looks, and the Lynx play probably the most beautiful basketball in the W. I'm gonna hear your thoughts on this because I know this is your team. This is your girl, Fee. I would be shocked if you didn't hear. If I didn't hear, I'm not gonna lie, Jay. I wouldn't be. I would be shocked if I didn't hear anything but domination from the Lynx from you.
TV. TV. I mean, TV. 50, 40, 90. I have a bunch of stats and notes that I have up here
Shout out to
that I
Elena
prepared for this
Deladondo, the
episode.
only other player besides Nafisa Collier to do this. It's her and the MVP season of Elena Deladon. But man, yeah, insane season from Fee.
TV. I mean, like, okay, I'll read exactly what my notes say to you, okay? Yeah. Second in the league with 23 points per game. First 50, 40, 90 season since Elena Deladon did it for the Washington Mystics when she won MVP. The only other player to have done it, as you mentioned beforehand.
Yeah.
More particularly, the shooting splits, 53 from the field, 40 from 3, 91 from the free throw line. Minnesota averages the most points in the league at 86.4 points per game and lead the league in both offensive and defensive rate. Kayla McBride is shooting 41% from beyond the arc this season. Nafisa Collier is averaging almost 2 blocks this season. Courtney Williams is averaging 6 assists per game right now. Dude, this team is absolutely cracked. I don't know any other way to put it. This team is absolutely cracked. Shout out to what Veronica Burton has been able to be for this Valkyries team, because she's been the bright spot of some of the players that have been able to stick, right? Obviously. But if I'm being real here, dude, again, as you mentioned beforehand, this is very lopsided. Minnesota was the best scoring offense in the W. The Valkyries were in the bottom 5, right? Nafisa was one of the most efficient scorers from the floor individually in the W this year. The Valkyries shot a league worst 41% from the field this year. This team is literally the antithesis of the Minnesota Lynx in almost every way. They don't have an MVP. They don't shoot the 3 ball at a high clip. They don't score at a high clip. Their offense is very murky, but very like let's just get it done, right? Get it done by any means. Minnesota, efficient, effective, like you said, beautiful brand of basketball. TV, this is gonna be a thrashing, dog. I'm gonna be real. In my personal opinion, I think this is gonna be a thrashing. Shout out to the Valkyries for making the postseason, being an expansion team, and losing your all-star player
And Kale Authority, I was
midway
gonna
through the
say they
season.
don't even have the number one option, too.
Yeah, bro. I mean, that's brutal. This is brutal. But I'd actually be more surprised if Minnesota doesn't dog walk this team, bro. I would be more shocked if the Valkyries play a close matchup in 2 games. I'll be more shocked by that than if Minnesota were to blow them out by 15 in 2 games. Like, I would be way more shocked at the Valkyries keeping it close and losing in 2 than I would at Minnesota blowing them out in 2 games. That's how confident I feel in Minnesota with what they
Yeah,
bring to the table and just how much they contrast to the Valkyries.
yeah. I want to shout the Valkyries, though. The fact they were able to, like, take it, like, all the way to this far and make it to the WNBA playoffs. Big shout to them. Veronica Burton. We talked about how Azura Stevens is probably going to be the most improved. Veronica Burton has, like, made itself pretty clear that she's definitely in that discussion. And I wouldn't be surprised if she won it as well.
Yeah.
Because Kayla Thorne, what we said, Kayla Thorne's out. We don't even know what's happening with Tiffany Hayes. She hasn't played since like August. So
Yeah.
we don't even know if she's going to be available. And she's like one of their top scorers as well. And then when you have a healthy Fee going to the playoffs, I mean, it was to the point where the Lynx were like, yeah, we're just going to rest Nafisha Collier because we don't want to have her re-aggravate any more injuries. And they were still able to win games on the backs of Kayla McBride, on Courtney Williams, Alana Smith, all those girls coming up big, Letitia Heidemann. I mean, this team was 1 game away from winning the WNBA championship last year, and they've looked better this year, Jay. That is the
Yes.
scary part.
Yes.
So it's going to be, I think we're both in agreement, Lynx in 2,
Yeah.
probably dominant fashion. But Jay, I'm going to just like change the topic here just very shortly because there's, as much as we both think they're going to win this series, but I want to focus more on the MVP discussion here because now that the series is over, now I can finally ask you this. Do you think Asia Wilson did enough to steal it away from Fee? Do you think, because like there's been a lot, it's been insane, but has she done enough to steal it from Fee?
Okay. Let's do this live on the pod because TV brought this up kind of as a curveball, and I'm actually interested to see the numbers. Right?
Yeah.
If we're being honest, should the Aces' recent run have merit in the MVP discussion? Yes. Yes, it should. Let me throw that out there. Because I need to be fair. Let's go band for band in terms of where all of this stands, right?
Yeah.
So, Asia does lead the league, 23.4 points, right above Nafisa at 22.9. Asia does lead the league in rebounds at 10.2 rebounds per game. Where is Nafisa is at 7.3. So, not leads. Well, Angel Reese didn't play enough games, so that's fine. Yeah. So there's that. Right. From an assist perspective, we're not going to go into that one too much. Their team's contracts vary separately from that one. Nafisa Collier and Asia Wilson are both in the top 5 in blocks per game, but Asia 2.3, Nafisa 1.5. Fair. Now, Nafisa Collier they're both tied in steals per game at 1.6. So far, we're going band for band, right? And everything says Asia in front, right? Everything says Asia in front. This is me being fair, by the way. We're walking through the process because everything statistically says Asia in front. Now, here's the thing that I would say. One, the Minnesota Lynx have been the most consistent team from start to finish. Period, point blank.
Yeah.
The Aces have defined themselves. Should that impact Asia Wilson's MVP case? I think a little bit. I think that does matter. You're the best player on a team that's considered to be a title contender, and it took a good handful of the season for y'all to get right. That starts with you. Same thing as with Nafisa. Yes, that team was able to survive with her missing a couple of games. That team also looks completely different level of dominant when she's on the floor. Number 2, again, the efficiency stats aspect of it. Is she was able to do all of this where she was top 5 in dang near every category for her position, being offense, defensive rebounds, block, steals, right? She's top 5 in all of those while shooting 50, 40, 90. Once again, a stat that only one other player has achieved. And when they did it, they won MVP. I do not think that she can put up these numbers this season, particularly coming off of what I thought was an MVP caliber season last year, now also be on the best team in the W definitively this year and not win the MVP. That's my long-winded way of saying, Asia, you did your best, but I think too little, too late, in my personal opinion.
I'm still gonna go with Nafisha as well. I think they made it so. Would I call it a robbery if Asia wins it? I think I would be less saying it's a robbery because, again, of the way the Vegas were able to put themselves firmly up into number 2, especially with, like, we mentioned it's on the back of Asia Wilson. She has been, like, fully, like, showing MVP, best player in the league, like, level Asia Wilson. Nafisha Kawhi has done this from start to finish. I do think the efficiency does matter as well, leading the number 1 defense in the league, leading the number 1 offense, being the catalyst of both of those. I'm gonna still edge it to Nafisha as well. I had Asia winning it last year, but like Jay said, a little too late. But again, if Asia ends up stealing it, I wouldn't call it a robbery by any sense of the word. Asia is just freaking good.
TV might not. I will. TV might not, but I will. I think this time.
Nafisha got it. Yeah.
I think this time you got to give it to. I think you got to give it to Nafisha.
Again, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
Don't get me wrong. I won't. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna like blast anybody for it, but I do feel like coming off of last season where it felt like the MVP was so much closer of a discussion. I feel like this season, if you were to give it to Asia Wilson, it is a little bit more of a what have you done for me lately, as opposed to the fact that Minnesota and particularly Nafisha has been consistent the entire season. And that I think that has to matter.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. We went on a little bit of a side tangent, but now that the season's over, I want to just get that sealed and stamped. We still both think that Nafisha Kawhi is the MVP, by the way, so that's good. That's cool. And we think that the Lynx are going to absolutely dominate the Valkyries. So the Valkyries are making it this far, but it is the Lynx series to lose. Jay, all of the WNBA playoff predictions. We have all of our series locked up. Again, we're proposing this tonight, so you guys are gonna hopefully see it before the playoffs start tomorrow. But let us know what you guys think down below. Who you guys, do you agree, disagree? Do you think that there's anyone else, any other X factors that we failed to mention? You want to hear your thoughts of it down below. Jay, we were thinking of doing this as a thing because we haven't really been talking about a lot of current NBA news, right? We were doing a bunch of top 10s. We did the top 10 series. We've been doing episodes on the doing the all-time draft, which will be coming out later on this month. We've been talking a lot about WNBA as well. So a lot of the current topics we've been talking about, we haven't really been talking about Eurobasket that much. We've been focused on more of the WNBA stuff more than that too. So we want to bring it over here. And I know Jay said at the top of the podcast, we're 2-3 weeks away from training camp, Jay. But a lot of the news in the NBA right now is off the court right now. And stuff is getting... Boy, is it. And we haven't had a chance to talk about this, so we want to at least give our thoughts to kind of end the episode on there because this has been absolutely crazy. So basically, 10 days ago, Pablo Torre on this podcast basically came up with this whole document, this whole report talking about Kawhi Leonard potentially getting a side deal with the tree planting company Aspiration as a way to kind of get money on the side for not signing the max deal. Because if you remember back in 2022, he signed less than the max. And people when people see that, they're gonna be like, he's just trying to look out for the Clippers. You want to make sure they have more money to give to other players so this team can be ready to compete. We've seen that with Jalen Brunson in the past. We've seen it with other players. Yada yada yada. But now, Jay, this is basically the recap of what's going on so far. So this Kawhi Leonard deal was a curious one told to the Boston Journal. According to our sources, none of the high-powered executives were consulted about this $28 million endorsement deal that Kawhi Leonard signed with Aspiration. it was paid as installments over 4 years, but it was not only the compensation that Kawhi Leonard received. There was another one. There was a bonus added to his deal as a side deal where he got an additional $20 million in company stock that was to be paid out by the company as well, bringing the compensation for Kawhi Leonard to $48 million. And the thing was, um, the commitment of Steve Ballmer was also involved in this company. He was a big part of it. He had a premium share of $11 per share, which and this is where the sketchy part was, Jay. He had a $50 million investment in the company to aspiration, where Kawhi Leonard got $50 million basically as a payout for that. So that was the original reporting. And then it got even worse a couple days ago when Pablo Torre did another episode of the podcast talking about this, where he said that Clippers minority owner invested $2 million, in late 2022. He invested $2 million into the company, and 5 days later, Kawhi Leonard was paid $2 million from that same company was paid $2 million from that same company. Mind you, he's a minority owner of the Clippers, and in aspiration, his daughter was one of the executive shareholders of the company. So not only you have the stuff from last week here, you have this week's reporting. Basically, what it looks like is that the Clippers are like, hey, we're going to give you less money on the salary cap just so we don't have to, so your money doesn't count as much here. But we got you on the side here. Mixed in with the stuff that he said on the past about wanting stocks and like when he wanted to re-sign with the Toronto Raptors and the Maple Leafs, extra endorsement deals, same thing with the Los Angeles Lakers. Jay, this whole situation has been sketchy as hell, basically. And people are waiting for Adam Silver to say something. When you saw all of this and you think, okay, I think we both agree that probably like all this sketchy stuff probably happened. What is Adam Silver going to do here? That's more than anything. Like whether you could say this is like true or not. Obviously, he has these like pretty extensive reports where it looks very much real that's happening. But what is Adam Silver to do here?
So the tricky part about this obviously comes down to historical context, right? Because we don't have a ton of precedents for this kind of concept.
Yes.
The last time that any of this took place, David Stern was still alive, God rest his soul. And when this type of situation took place,
the Joe Smith contract.
Yeah, essentially 5 first-round picks were revoked. Now it turned into 3 because of a bunch of semantics and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, the initial statement of the punishment was 5 first-round picks were revoked. For an LA Clippers team that don't really got too many first-round picks to begin with,
yeah,
it's kind of tricky because what do you do? I mean, financially, sure, you could slap it on the wrist and make the billion-dollar man, the 7th most rich guy in the world, pay a fine. But what's a fine when he's already been paying under the table as it is, right? Could you revoke Kawhi Leonard's contract?
Can you void it?
Sure.
Because the Joe Smith one, they only voided it was like a $7 million contract per year. It was a lot at the time, obviously, because it's like the early 2000s. But it was like this is like from maybe like a starter level center to now like one of the like all timers in the NBA. This is like what makes it like really interesting.
But here's the thing, though, too, TV. If you void his contract, the man's 34 years old. Could that potentially be more or less beneficial financially on the books for the LA Clippers? Right?
Yeah.
Because paying the near max, even with it being the fact that like he took a quote unquote haircut, any other kind of financial like slippage from the Kawhi Leonard contract actually kind of benefits the financial books of the LA Clippers from a team building standpoint, right? So, do you suspend Kawhi Leonard as a circumvention of this? Sure, that's an option as well, I guess. Again, by suspending him, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to suspend Kawhi Leonard while also forcing the LA Clippers to still pay out his contract? Because that's the only way you hurt Steve Ballmer as the owner in that situation is you're paying for no production, right?
Yeah.
In terms of Kawhi. You're paying that kind of money towards essentially an empty roster spot. It's the equivalent of the Milwaukee Bucks doing the wave and stretch with Damian Lillard and all the money that they owe, where now when you factor in the Miles Turner contract, they're paying essentially $50 million a year for no Damian Lillard and pretty much just production from Miles Turner over the next 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Or the Bradley Beal contract for the Phoenix Suns, right? That type of thing. So that's essentially what you're looking at with Kawhi Leonard is, do you suspend Kawhi Leonard and force Steve Ballmer to still have to pay out Kawhi Leonard's contract? That hurts Steve, but Kawhi still gets paid,
Yeah.
right? Or do you void Kawhi Leonard's contract and make it where either Steve has to pay the full max and it hurts the salary cap that way, or does Steve give a more favorable and lucrative deal that fits the salary cap of the LA Clippers now, where in that sense, it makes the cost efficiency of the LA Clippers roster building better. So there's no real great way to solve this where you actually hurt the Clippers in the way that you need to in order to set a precedent here. Because either Kawhi still gets paid and just doesn't play, or his contract is restructured and the LA Clippers books look better.
It could, yeah. It's definitely a weird one. I was looking at the future draft picks of the LA Clippers, and basically, if they were to vote to get rid of to revoke 5 first round picks, it would be the 2027 one, which was a pick swap with the Thunder. It's getting worse and worse every day, man.
Right.
2029, another pick swap with the Thunder, again looking pretty bad. Then you got 2031 and 2032. And then probably 2033 when that becomes available. So you have that. The only way I see them, and you really make sure that people don't do it anymore, is the voiding of Kawhi Leonard's contract, which that's going to be a whole freaking Players Association issue at that point, because you don't want that's going to be a whole grievance with them as well. But you have to make it so Kawhi Leonard at least loses a chunk of that contract, but also that contract is going to still count on the Clippers books. If Adam Silver were to actually put his foot down and really make it so they don't want this precedent to be set and they don't want this to happen going forward, he's going to have to do something like that where Kawhi Leonard is no longer with the Clippers, his contract is voided, maybe he forfeits a part of the salary, but then also Steve Ballmer and the Clippers are still going to have to deal with this on the cap end with alongside a fine. So limits their roster construction. They don't have the player to even that they paid a max contract to, and Steve Ballmer does it. I honestly don't think any sort of fine that they give to Steve Ballmer is gonna really matter. I think I saw where it's like an $8 million fine to Steve Ballmer is basically us common folk getting $100 fine for freaking a parking ticket. That's basically what it is. That tells you that just freaking levels it is, and this is why he's the freaking seventh richest man in the world. But the question is, Jay, even though these are the possibilities that can happen, does Adam Silver do it? That is the big question here. Does he actually do it? Does he actually put his foot down, or would become what some people might say, like Zach Lowe and some other people on podcasts, or Mark Cuban as a slap on the wrist? Which route? If you're Adam Silver, which way are you going?
Man, that's so tough because the real question is more about the status of Kawhi Leonard than it is Steve Ballmer, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
That's where I really stand is I genuinely believe that the area of focus in order for this to be considered a real punishment is more so what you do to Kawhi Leonard on the receiving end of the contract than it is Steve Ballmer. Because again, as you mentioned beforehand, financially, there's no version of this that truly hurts the pockets of the Clippers unless it's particularly to the cap situation. And again, they circumvented that by doing this whole thing with aspiration in the first place. So that was their whole way of getting around the salary cap machinations in the first place, was by doing any of this, right? Allegedly, of course, right? So it's more focused on the receiving end being the player on who is knowingly in this situation, obviously, right? This was he was being paid this under the table on a no-show basis, a no-show clause basis. So you're aware that you're being compensated
for not doing
essentially an
anything.
extra 50 million for essentially not doing anything,
Yeah,
not promoting aspiration on social media, which has never been a thing we associated with Kawhi Leonard, by the way, anyway, outside of New Balance. Let's throw that
yeah,
out there. And a guy who has never necessarily been the spokesperson for a brand to begin with. So all that being said, I think you have to void Kawhi Leonard's contract. This is what I say is your most effective route if you're Adam Silver. You have to void Kawhi Leonard's contract. You have to suspend him for the season because if he hits the waiver, any other team could throw money at him.
yeah,
And any team right now, obviously, most teams have the veteran minimum, whatever, so you can't really provide a lucrative contract deal to Kawhi Leonard that would be sufficient. But we just saw Damian Lillard sign for $15 million a year while
yeah.
also making another like $30 million plus
For a year with the Bucks, yeah,
season with the Milwaukee Bucks, right?
yeah,
And Bradley Beal's in a fairly similar situation, shorter amount of time though, because he's only got like 2 more years on that contract. But he signed for about 13, 14 million, if I'm not mistaken, with the Clippers himself, right?
mm-hmm.
I think you have to void his contract. I think you have to suspend him for the season. And I would say the way to at least make it a balance of power is the Clippers are the first team up on the waiver wire to essentially retain their player back. But they have to do it within the machinations of what their actual cap structure at that time, being the 2026-27 offseason, would look like. So he would miss the entire 2025-26 season. The 26 summer, they will be the first team available to offer, as if you were talking to Kawhi Leonard in a contract situation where you had his bird rights. Look at it that way,
Yeah,
right? And they would be the first team eligible to offer a contract to him with whatever their cap machinations are at the time, which actually should be pretty solid in terms of expiring contracts and things of that nature, but that's neither here nor there. And you go about it that way. Does that still mean that the Clippers could mess around and have Kawhi Leonard 2 seasons from now, essentially, at age 36? Yes. Are
yeah,
you going to be likely to want to give an age 36 Kawhi Leonard that's had significant injury issues 20 to 25 plus million dollars, if not more, a year? The Clippers might not be as excited about that after being invoked in a scandal and having a year without his production.
yeah,
So even though they might be at the top of the list as the team to potentially reach out to Kawhi Leonard about re-upping on a contract after his suspension first, maybe they don't want him back after everything they've went through, paired with the lack of success the Clippers have had since acquiring Kawhi Leonard. That maybe the juice ain't worth the squeeze, and that's the way that you set the precedent. It's
yeah,
not great. It's not great, but
yeah,
the guy just makes too much money for you to really hurt him any other way.
yeah. And they had to do this because, like the other teams, because at this point, right, we always talk about these bigger markets like LA, like the Lakers, the Clippers, all these guys already having that lore of like wanting people to come there, obviously for the hot weather, for the less taxes, yada yada yada. But if they're able to do it like the MLB, where you could just, you know, abandon salary cap rules or trying to like circumvent your way around them, and because they already have the appeal of being the Miamis, the Clippers, the Lakers, all that stuff, already to do that, that just makes it in a league, by the way, that Adam Silver continuously wants to say has parity across the board. He
True.
wants to
Very true.
continue
Very
to
good point, TV. Very good point.
and not only does he say that they have parity across the board, he is proud of it. He is
Yes.
proud of it compared to any other leagues. I feel like we've seen stuff with the NFL where they want parity to be an option, but also they we've seen it with some of their players, man. They go through a bunch of shit and they'll still be able to play in the league. Like so, like
Right.
you already know that kind of stuff already happens. And you know, like in the baseball, because of the lack of salary cap, you see freaking multi-$100 million contracts every single offseason with teams like the LA Dodgers and the and like all those type of teams there, the top end teams with the New York Yankees and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
if Adam Silver really does care about the image of the league, and he really cares about the priority aspect of this, they need to do some. They need to make a decision quickly, and they also need to make sure that they put the foot down hard. Now, is this going to happen? We've seen it done with the Steve Ballmer stuff. We've seen that not the Steve Ballmer stuff. We've seen it with the Donald Sterling just completely kick him out of the league for, that whole situation. We've seen him, with John Moran. John Moran got a freaking 50-game suspension for not technically doing anything illegal, but for just making the image of the league look bad. So,
Yeah.
by precedent, you would think that Adam Silver would do this. But again, this is hurting, the top brass of the NBA. So that's going to make things really interesting. So, do I think he's going to do it? I think there's a low end to this and a high end to this. I think there's going to be something in the middle, but I would really hope that there's a high end to this, because if you really want to protect the integrity of the league, the integrity of the rest of team building, then they do this. I think there's going to be something in between that no one has really reported on. So I think that's what's going to end up happening. But I hope that he actually puts his foot down, because there's something that has to change here.
Yeah, bro. I mean, it's even tough because let's say you go the suspension route where you decide to do the 50 games that you did with John Morant, right? Or you decide to do something substantial of that ilk, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's called load management for Kawhi Leonard. So that makes it even more of a unique situation, because it's like, again, that could be a balancing act in favor of the Clippers by you doing that, because now you're reserving him for a postseason run. You're reserving him for a postseason run. All you're asking is for Ivica Zubac, James Harden, and Bradley Beal to hold the fort down, get this team to a 4th or 5th seed so they're secured into the postseason picture, and then you bring Kawhi Leonard back, who's missed 40, 50 games of the season, still makes the money on the back end of it. The Clippers still get to make postseason money with Kawhi Leonard back in the fray. It's like, again, this is a really unique situation with a very unique player, because everything points to, no matter what route you go, there's no real way to really hurt this guy, or hurt Steve Ballmer for that matter, in a way that also should make other teams shudder, because their situation is so unique. The superstar himself is already a player that's in his mid-30s. If you try to void his contract and say that we have to re-up, that you void his contract, suspend him, and you bring him back a season later, you're now taking one of your NBA All-Star, All-NBA caliber players off the books for the season. We already have 3 of those guys missing, right? Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
Now you take another one out before the season even starts in Kawhi Leonard. Let's say you do the suspension, you suspend him for 50 games. Now you're just doing what the Clippers would like to do anyway, which is to keep Kawhi Leonard as fresh as humanly possible for the playoffs. So that doesn't help you. Finding Steve Ballmer, you just said that finding that man $8 million is the equivalent to giving me a $100 speeding ticket. Huh? At that point, you can't hurt him financially from that perspective. And let's say you go a completely different crazy route and make it where Kawhi Leonard, his contract is voided and he just hits the waiver wire. Now somebody's getting Kawhi Leonard for like $14, $15 million to add to their roster. Let's say the Lakers in the same state, or the Golden State Warriors, who have been trying to look for that other guy, open up the cap space to situate themselves to go after a $14, $15 million a year version of Kawhi Leonard on budget ball. Now you've bolstered a completely different roster, all at the expense of trying to prove a point.
Yeah, I don't know. This is gonna be definitely an interesting situation, and I'm the payout more than anything is gonna be like super important to see how that's gonna end up playing out. But yeah, we just wanted to talk about it. We weren't able to do it on the pod yet, so let us know down below what you think of the situation, what Adam Silver should do. This is a very unique one. This is not Joe Smith we're talking about. This is Kawhi Leonard, who has been a staple of the NBA for how many years now in terms of an all-NBA level player, former Finals MVP. It's going to be super interesting to see what they do over there. But yeah, Jay, we've reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you tell these people before we sign out? We have WNBA playoffs going on. It's going to be interesting to talk about. The NBA season's coming up. Great time to be a basketball fan, and I'm glad, and I'm hopefully we get to stop talking about this off the court stuff and get back to talking some on the court basketball.
Yeah, man. WNBA playoffs are in full effect. NBA training camp only a few weeks away. NBA season previews coming up over the next couple of weeks here on the podcast. Looking to do some more consistent episodes outside of our one episode drop a week so you guys can hear our voices a little bit more and hopefully see some more guests along the way. Ton of content coming very quickly, man. I'm very excited as the NBA season gets closer, and I'm going to enjoy every second of the WNBA playoffs as well because I am very excited to see some high-level basketball, and I think these are going to be some really good opening round series.
100%. Can't wait to see that. And yeah, just make sure you check out all the stuff for Hit Your Free Throws. We're going to try to react to it as much as we can going through the WNBA playoffs. You can check us out again. TikTok, Instagram for the short form stuff. Make sure you check us out on the podcast network, YouTube, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of you guys' support. Should be excited to see what that has to go on very soon. But yeah, it's been a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. We'll be back next week with a new episode. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.